We need to reset. I mean, we're in a 1776 moment. We really are. And it's time to rethink where we are. So Kelly quotes, I'm going to quote the missus here, my better two-thirds, because this is critical. The hospitals are full. They are. Patients are dying. Staff is leaving. Delta's escaping the vaccines. Something has to change. What I'd like to do next, I had the opportunity of meeting with some colleagues recently in distant lands. And some of you probably watched the work of Dr. Robert Malone, the architect of mRNA technology, one of my good friends and colleagues. And I was with the A-team of doctors from around the world, and it was a wonderful experience. And this is what we came up with. We've formed the International Alliance of Physicians and Medical Scientists. And this is our declaration to the world. We, the physicians of the world, united and loyal to the Hippocratic Oath, recognizing the profession of medicine as we know it is at a crossroad, are compelled to declare the following. Whereas it is our utmost responsibility and duty to uphold and restore the dignity, integrity, art, and science of medicine, whereas there is an unprecedented assault on our ability to care for our patients, whereas public policy has chosen to ignore fundamental concepts of science, health, and wellness, instead embracing a one-size-fits-all treatment strategy, which has led to more illness and death than the individualized, personalized approach to healthcare, whereas physicians and other healthcare providers working on the front lines, utilizing their knowledge of epidemiology, pathophysiology, and pharmacology, are often first to identify new, potentially life-saving treatments, whereas physicians are increasingly being discouraged from engaging in open professional discourse and the exchange of ideas about new and emerging diseases, not only endangering the essence of the medical profession, but more importantly, more tragically, the lives of our patients. Whereas thousands of physicians are being denied the right to provide treatment to their patients as a result of barriers put up by pharmacies, hospitals, and public health agencies, rendering the vast majority of healthcare providers helpless to protect their patients in the face of disease. Physicians are now advising their patients to simply go home, allowing the virus to incubate and return when their disease worsens, resulting in hundreds of thousands of unnecessary patient deaths due to failure to treat. Whereas the above is not medicine. It is not care. We cannot sit idle while patients are forced to go home and sicken in place. These policies may actually constitute crimes against humanity. Now, therefore, it is resolved that the physician-patient relationship must be restored. The very heart of medicine is this relationship, which allows physicians to best understand their patients and their illnesses, to formulate treatments to give the best chance for success while the patient is an active participant in their care. Resolve that the political intrusion into the practice of medicine and the physician-patient relationship must end. Physicians and healthcare providers must have the freedom to practice the art and science of medicine without fear of retribution, and all healthcare without fear of retribution, without fear of censorship, slander, or disciplinary action, to include possible loss of licensure and hospital privileges, loss of insurance contracts, and interference from government entities and organizations, which further prevent us from caring for patients in need. More than ever, the right and the ability to exchange objective scientific findings which further our understanding of disease must be protected. Resolve that physicians must defend their right to prescribe treatment. Observing the tenet first, do no harm, physicians shall not be restricted from prescribing safe and effective treatments. These restrictions continue to cause unnecessary sickness and death. The right of patients, after being fully informed about the risk and benefits of each option, must be restored to receive those treatments. Resolve that we invite physicians of the world and all healthcare providers to join us in this noble cause as we endeavor to restore trust, integrity, and professionalism to the practice of medicine. Resolve that we invite the scientists of the world who are skilled in biomedical research and uphold the highest ethical and moral standards to insist on their ability to conduct and publish objective, empirical research without fear of reprisal upon their careers, reputations, and livelihoods. Resolve that we invite patients who believe in the importance of the physician-patient relationship and the ability to be active participants in their care to demand access to science-based medical care. Okay, I'm going to switch modes here. Thank you for letting me read that. This is critically important. We are at a crossroad. Delta variant, is it real? Yes, it is. Okay, how do we know that? I run a lab. We test, we find virus, we send it, we sequence it. 99% of what we're experiencing is Delta. We're essentially experiencing a new virus. It's not Wuhan, it's 5 variants ago. We're moved far on from that. So you can see we're variant onto Delta here. Delta spreads faster. I think we're experiencing this and seeing this. Everyone's at risk. And this is why I'm going to talk about a few things. The vaccinated and the unvaccinated. Symptoms start sooner, more of a fever, sore throat, not as much loss of taste and smell with this variant, still headaches, loose GI, etc. Here's what's important, and here's where we need to be honest. And you don't hear this currently in the media. Delta's escaping the vaccines. If you look at Gibraltar, Iceland, the UK, Israel, the Seychelles, Cyprus, Australia, they were vaccinated 4 to 6 months ago in a lot of these areas, and we're finding that the vaccines are waning. And because of the mutations, we're having tons of breakthroughs. I mean, in the Israel ICUs, 95% of patients in some of those ICUs are double vaccinated. The death rates in some of these countries are far higher in the vaccinated than in the unvaccinated. So you'll hear something different from our data now here. I hope they're being transparent. I'm just being a voice and a harbinger of warning that it's going to shift because the vaccines are going to wane. So we need to be scientifically honest. That's all I'm being. I'm not criticizing anyone or anything. I'm just saying that's the fact. We do have asymmetric data reporting here. They say, oh, everybody in the hospitals are unvaccinated, whereas we just found 23% back in June were actually in the hospitals were actually vaccinated. So we're so slow on our data here, and the other countries that I mentioned, they're progressive and forward-thinking and actually prospective week to week to week. They have updates. When was the last weekly update we had in a row here? When was the last update on the safety of the vaccines? Which one may be safer? Which one may be performing better? Anything like that? No. In the last 8 months, crickets. So we need to demand transparency in healthcare. People have higher viral loads. Is it deadlier? Well, around the world, not so far. And that's good news. I mean, Delta is a wildfire. Here's the mixed blessing in this. A lot of people are going to get sick. That's sad. A lot of people in the hospital. More people are going to lose their lives. But we're going to achieve a herd immunity much faster. So, I mean, do I want anyone to be sick? Of course not. Of course not. Do I want everybody to survive? Of course. So, I'm not going to go through too much science, but mutations, and this is part of the reason the fear and cleavage one. The fear and cleavage, this is where the S1 and the S2 split apart, and this little thing in the middle allows more virus to bind to us. The earlier variants, about 10% of virus would get into our cells. Now about 75% will get into our cells. That's why we're seeing a different behavior now of Delta. So it's just a little cartoon of how it binds to our cells, and the S1 and the S2 split apart. And S1 is very inflammatory, and COVID is a clotting disease. It's an inflammatory clotting disease. Inflammatory clotting. So everybody, the moment you're diagnosed, test and treat, test and treat, test and treat, test and treat. Don't test and wait. We have anti-inflammatory, the drugs that shall not be named that they want to take away from us, whatever. Some of the safest drugs on planet Earth that are antivirals and anti-inflammatories. But there are other medicines. I mean, take an aspirin the moment if you're not allergic. The moment you have diagnosis of COVID, start taking daily aspirin for 2, 3, 4 weeks actually, because COVID can be a 28-day disease. COVID's a clotting disease. Let's stop that. Anti-inflammatories, colchicine, steroids at the appropriate point, etc. Nebulized budesonide, it's a steroid that halts the inflammation in the lungs like that the moment you have inflammation in the lungs and pulmonary symptoms. These are all critical things any doctor can do. They don't have to be afraid of what a board is going to say that you use those medicines. These are common medicines. You need to be using common sense. This is the important one here, next one. Delta, and this is where I hope my medical colleagues will have a conversation. I invite those who criticize me. Dr. Pate, I publicly invite you to a cordial conversation about science. Please sit down with me, Dr. Pate. Any of you that want to criticize me, I'm in it for the patient. I know you want to be too, you are too. Let's find the common ground so that we can help the patient and quit criticizing each other. I'm not here to criticize anyone. I'm here to attack a virus so I can help humanity. But this is important. At the end of the virus on the spike, the antibodies that were made from the original shots were neutralizing. But these mutations now, these antibodies bind. And if you have a binding non-neutralizing antibody, now your immune cells can gobble the virus in, and it Trojan horses and replicates itself inside you at a higher rate. So like in a study in Vietnam, an Oxford trial, it showed the vaccinated healthcare workers in this hospital had a 251 times higher viral load. So without binding non-neutralizing, we're escaping the vaccine. And if we give another booster, we weaken our immune system even more. Another booster, we weaken our immune system even more. And we're giving the wrong booster. We're still giving a shot for Wuhan, and we're on to Delta. It's like saying to the healthcare workers in the hospital, flu season's coming, we're going to give you a flu shot. By the way, we've got some leftover flu shots in the freezer from 4 or 5 years ago. Why don't we just give you those? Hogwash, nonsense. Everybody would say, no, that doesn't make any sense. I want this year's vaccine. Well, with Delta escaping like this, we need to reset our disease. Okay, are you prepared? What about your immune health? What's your vitamin D level? Your pro-hormone D level? I mean, that's critical. Independent of age, race, sex, ethnicity, vitamin D, Quest Diagnostics did 191,000 people that track. And the line directly showed, look, if you've got a normal vitamin D, your chance of being severely sick or even acquiring COVID is extremely low. This is their graph. There you can see that nice little 50 right there. And that sweet spot is 55. That's where all your vitamin D receptors are saturated. And when you get sick, your body consumes your vitamin D. So if you start low, you're in trouble. Mayo Clinic did a study below 30 is when you started seeing hospitalizations and ICU, and below 20 is when you're starting to look at mechanical ventilation. This is something so simple. For pennies, you can save your life. Preventing. I'm not saying you're not going to get sick, but it's going to shorten the course of your disease and make the disease much less to experience. All right, do you have comorbidities? We need to be honest with ourselves. Do you have, this pandemic, everybody put on weight. I lost too much. But I mean, are we cutting out the sugars? Are we cutting out the inflammatory foods? Are we cutting out the inflammatory seed oils? Are we cutting out things that are not good for our immune health? Okay, so these are the risk factors, and you've heard them all in the news. Interesting, the number 2 risk factor beyond obesity is fear and anxiety disorders. For severe outcomes. So what are we doing about our fear and anxiety disorders? And how is society helping us with that? Whatever you can do for a mindfulness practice, a meditation practice, a prayer practice, whatever it may be, to put your mind at ease, your cortisol will go down and your immune system will be much more functional. All right, diet, I already mentioned that one. Got the carbs. Intermittent fast. Fasting will vastly decrease your inflammatory markers. Sleep. Sleep, 7-8 hours, consistent sleep. I haven't been doing much of that either. It makes your immune cells stickier so they can talk to each other. The better rested you are, the more functional your immune system is. All right, what's the big message? Do we have a pandemic of the unvaccinated, or do we have a pandemic of undertreatment?
Undertreatment.
We have a pandemic of undertreatment. There are ways to treat this disease early. We just need the will to do it, and administrations and systems to get out of the way and let doctors be doctors. So we can save your life. Clotting disease, clotting disease, clotting disease. I've mentioned that. COVID is a clotting disease. It's an inflammatory disease. There are plenty of meds. Plenty of meds. And there's a long list. Ivermectin. Yes, it is not a horse pill. The media is gaslighting humanity. That's disgusting. Journal of Antibiotics, 15 June 2021, just read that article. That's the mechanisms of action as an antiviral we've known for dozens of years. Yellow fever, dengue, Zika virus, HIV, chikungunya virus, West Nile, coronaviruses, etc. We've known the antiviral mechanisms of this safe drug that's been taken by 4 billion people on the planet in the last 3.5 decades. It is a safe medication in spite of what you're being gaslighted about. So anybody who has one scintilla of honesty, read the articles and read the data. And if you have a counterpoint and you're a colleague and a physician, bring the counterpoint. But this is an FDA-approved medication. It has been a human medication for 34 years. We give it to poor, starving children in Africa once a week or once every month. We give it to the people coming in from Afghanistan right now. We give it to people all over the place. Oh, I'm so sorry. I get all excited with my arms here. Okay. They get in the way. I don't want to hit anything. Journal of Antibiotics, go to nature.com. One of the most, the deepest, most important scientific journals on the planet are nature.com. Find the Journal of Antibiotics, 15 June 2021, the mechanisms of action of ivermectin. All right, there's a lot of other drugs. I'm going to skip over that. You can take a picture of them. Interestingly, some of the supplements that help, obviously, if you're sick, N-acetylcysteine is a glutathione precursor. The lower your vitamin D, the lower your glutathione. Glutathione is critical as an antioxidant. High-dose vitamin D when you're sick. Critical for gene signaling. Most doctors don't know, the higher your vitamin D, the lower your clotting levels are. You don't clot as much if your D is normal, but it's a clotting disease. Vitamin C, zinc, melatonin. Yes, the sleep medication, that hormone, protects your mitochondria, the powerhouse of your cells. Melatonin has phenomenal effects against COVID. Selenium is important for T cell activity. Next. I've mentioned some of these already, a couple of those. Oh, this is an important one. Men do worse than women with COVID, and the outcomes tend to be more poor. If we block men's testosterone for a couple of days, androgen blockers, there's studies in Brazil showing phenomenal effect for blocking androgens. And it saved a lot of lives. So there's some phenomenal data coming out of Brazil on that. All right, I want to switch gears. All right, there's two groups in society right now, right? Vaccinated and the unvaccinated, and we're pitted against each other, right? A false dichotomy. There are three groups. We have the vaccinated, indeed. We have the unvaccinated, both of which are still at risk for getting Delta, to be quite honest, both. Then we have this supreme group that's being ignored, and we have this anti-science movement. Those are the COVID recovered. The COVID recovered have a broad, durable, long-lasting immunity, far, far stronger than a vaccine immunity. Look at the data out of Israel. Look at the data out of the Cleveland Clinic, where they had, 1,300 and whatever healthcare workers that got COVID. How many of them have gotten COVID again? Goose egg. Yeah. So a broad, long-lasting natural immunity. Let's think about a bicycle. All right. I can talk about the membrane and the envelope and the nucleocapsid and all the antibodies you make against this, that, and the other, but let's imagine the virus is a bicycle. The front tire is the spike protein. You get a vaccine, you make antibodies against the front tire. You get a natural infection, you make antibodies against that lovely basket there, the frame, the grips, the bell, the wires, the seat, the post, the cranks, the chain, the back tire, the spokes, the whole enchilada, the whole bicycle. Your body remembers all those other proteins on the virus, and you get T cell memory to all those shapes too. All right. Now the bike gets into a crash. Front tire, your spike protein, there's your delta. It's bent. It's a different shape now. What do you think those antibodies in the vaccinated are going to do? They're going to maybe find part of it, but they've escaped that. It's a different shape. It's a different lock and key. But those who are COVID recovered, look at that. The rest of the bicycle is intact. You still have memory for the rest of that. So your body looks at it and goes, this spike's a little bent. I can attack the rest of this. That's what matters. I have a broad, long-lasting natural immunity. Variant after variant after variant. The rest of the bicycle is really conserved, and your body remembers that. All right, another important type of antibody here. I want to talk about a really nice antibody, and this again is being ignored in medicine and just in immunology. Immunoglobulin A. If you get a natural, where does COVID get into your body? Your eyes, your nose, your mouth. Okay, your mucosa. If you get a shot, you form an IgG antibody eventually, which circulates, and that's cool and dandy and everything, but what you don't form is a mucosal antibody. This IgA secretory antibody is critical to fight off infections that enter in the eyes, the nose, the throat. So the naturally immune COVID recovered have IgA antibodies to clear the virus every time it comes along. The vaccinated don't. And so we're seeing the breakthrough cases of COVID in the vaccinated because they can't neutralize it there. And they don't have as strong of a T cell memory either. So here you have it. Those tears are important. They're full of antibodies. So are yours. Okay. I put the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man up here for a reason. People are like, oh, I'm losing my antibodies. My levels are going down. What am I going to do? I'm losing my immunity. Hogwash. If you maintained an antibody response all day long to every pathogen you were exposed to on a daily basis, you would look like the swollen Stay Puft Marshmallow Man of lymph nodes. It would be humanly, energetically impossible for your body to do that. Our body naturally drops the antibody levels. It doesn't mean we don't have memory plasma cells that make those antibodies in our lymph nodes, in our bone marrow. They're there. They're just quietly waiting for the virus to come along again. They'll rev right back up. So when they say, you're losing your antibodies, now you need a shot. More important, you have memory T cells. Antibodies will always win. You see on the top line there, that yellow line going down, that red line going down, those are a couple of the antibodies. See that straight line going across? That's your T cell memory. And that T cell memory, let's talk about SARS-CoV-1. Individuals that had SARS-CoV-1 18 years in running still have memory to SARS-CoV-1. That's called a broad, long-lasting immunity, isn't it? So what's one of the most critical important things to keep your immune system functional? To make antibodies, to keep your T cells active? Vitamin D. And so when we hear about waning immunity in certain populations or post-vaccinated individuals, how many public health officials are talking about how important vitamin D is?
None. You.
I'm trying. Studies this year already show robust T cell immunity to a prior SARS-CoV-2 infection. So we need to be honest. What about getting a shot after having had COVID? We're hearing this, aren't we? Increased risk of adverse reactions by giving the shot when the COVID recovered. And I'll tell you why in a second here. Increased risk of hospitalization if you get a shot after being COVID recovered. Excess antibody response, Goldilocks effect, just enough is good. Too much is not. This one's too hot. So Mathodakis, Kramer, Raw, those are articles you can look up on getting a shot after. Okay. Sanjay Gupta was talking to Dr. Fauci on a segment the other night. Studies showing that COVID recovered immunity is certainly stronger than a vaccine immunity. And he says to Dr. Fauci, patients say, I've already had COVID, I'm already protected, even more protected than a vaccine alone, which is true. Why should they also get the vaccine? How do you make a case for that? Dr. Fauci's answer, that's a really good point, Sanjay. I don't really have a firm answer for you on that. Because he knows, he's a virologist, for heaven's sakes, Dr. Fauci, he knows a broad, long-lasting immunity is a broad, long-lasting immunity for COVID. Okay, screen before vaccine. So we're hearing this message, get a shot, get a shot, get a shot, get a shot. In the middle of a fast-spreading virus, do you hear this message? If you get a shot, your body, your choice. I'm not pro-vaccine, I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm pro-good science. Delta has escaped the shot we're giving, yes. However, if you give a shot in the middle of a fast-spreading virus, you are now highly susceptible to infection. Highly susceptible in the next several weeks. And I have seen countless individuals, well, I finally got my shot, the hospital or whatever was making me But then they go and get infected. Why? You have broad natural antibodies that are non-specific, and they go to sleep while you're focusing all your energy on making an antibody to what you're to vaccine. And because of that, now you're a sitting duck. You're a sitting duck. And this is important. You're immune suppressed. If you are cooking the virus when you get a shot, if you don't screen to find out if you've already had COVID, and you get a shot while you're cooking COVID in your body, tons of clotting, tons of adverse reactions. It is dangerous. So if you choose, again, your body, your choice, depending, your risk, it's always a personal risk assessment and should only ever be a risk assessment. I don't take an antibody or an antibiotic if you have a bladder infection. I take a medicine for me, not for you. If I have a broken leg and need to take a pain pill, I don't take it for you, I take it for me. A medical procedure is for me. So if I need a shot and choose it, that's my body, my choice, but I'm not going to force you to do it because I do it for my own protection. And you should do it for your own if that's your choice, and if you choose not to, that's your choice. All right, one thing I want to talk about is immune high zone tolerance. That too hot, that Goldilocks effect, you get too much of an immune response when you get a shot after having COVID, or you get a third booster, whatever, fourth booster, fifth booster, whatever whack-a-mole we're going to play chasing a virus. You eventually build what's called an immune tolerance. It's called a high zone tolerance, and your body eventually says, I don't know what to do, we're just all going to go by it. And now you've actually suppressed your long-term immunity. That's not